Let's go.
Shalom, shalom, family. Wholeness to everybody. Again, same place, same time. We're gonna get a different result this time, though.
All right.
I want to give a little first of a testimony, and then a little overview, and then on into our topic. First, the testimony kind of goes back to about 2004. I'm sorry, 2004. In 2004, I was in Cleveland, the jurisdiction in Cleveland, and I brought my son home, but usually every day I used to take him out with me, and we would be moving around the city. And what happened is I brought him home. I kind of used to have the morning to, do things that I was doing. And he and I used to be upstairs in the bedroom looking out the window. And as we would look out the window, we'd see a lot of cars moving back and forth. But I noticed when I was at that particular time, there was a particular scent. I mean, a particular scent that I could smell. And it didn't matter where I went, I smelled the same scent. I smelled the same scent. And it was not a real, loud. But it was a scent that I could smell. And process of time, I came home. I ended up having to go to South Africa to teach, and I left him here. While I was in South Africa, that same scent was with me all down South Africa. So I was down there for about a month, and I noticed the scent started to disappear, But what was happening in the disappearance of the scent, my sense of smell began to dissipate too. In other words, I couldn't smell things very well. And that has continued on, until this day. But an interesting thing happened this morning. I naturally talked to the wife about it, but as I was starting my day this morning, I happened to walk through the front room, out of the computer room toward the kitchen or the cartesian, and I smelled this scent, and it smelled like something was burning, and it was very strong to me. But the wife is in the cartesian herself, but she don't smell the scent. Now, but I mentioned to her, I said, wow, you're burning something. So she didn't, no, I didn't burn. She goes over and looked at the pressure cooker. She got the pressure cooker on. So she cut it off and she allowed it to cool down. And then she opened it up. This is like 15 minutes, 15 minutes later, she opened the pressure cooker up. There was absolutely no water at all in the pressure cooker. It was getting ready to burn, and she was preparing this for guests now. And she didn't have time or, to do this over if she had a burning. But the scent was so strong to me that she followed the instructions, cut it off. She called me in about 10 minutes later, and she testified, but she testified from a moralistic point of view. And I mentioned this to us a few days ago. She was saying to me that, wow, you always say you couldn't smell. She said, but I didn't smell that. She said, but you know what? Was no water in the pot. It was getting ready to burn. And she said, wow, that's a testimony that if you live right and you live by certain laws, morals, she said, Yah will always what? Respond to you.
Gotcha. Yes.
And I said, interesting.
Right.
Now,
Yes.
me and her are going to have a conversation about this
Yes.
at another level.
Yes, absolutely.
I wanted to present this to the family because we can see that something is happening and it is being verified that it is happening. And if we are what? Elevating our consciousness, we are able to pick it up and we're able to see what's taking place.
Yes. Yes.
Because that's certainly my ability to smell is not good at all. But that was a testimony that has a force that emanates from you and with you. And when you make contact with it, it will always what? Respond to you.
That's correct.
Yes, absolutely. Kane.
You know, so
Nasik.
I wanted to start off with that, you know.
Yes.
And I would say this is a testimony about the ancestors when you begin to start to activate that neuro-melanin at another level within the brain.
Yes. Yes. Kane Nasik.
So I wanted to just start there and I want to mention something. And Eitai, I've been teaching about this, and it's all part of the same teaching. Now, we've heard of this term called grafting, right? And Eitai talking about it. So I mentioned to you all yesterday that I was going to give you this YouTube, you know, video where that you could pull it up and you could look at this picture that he got on the screen here. And it's so significant because I'm walking today about an hour and a half ago, and the spirit of grafting came over me. And as it did, I said, wow. So I called the sister called where I was going. I told her to get the Bible out, and I needed her to look up the word grafting. And I want to read you the definition, and I'm going to tie it in, and then we'll go over a brief, you know, review of things that we're talking, and we'll get started.
Now, so are you going from the Hebrew or the Greek?
I'm going from the English graft.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Good.
This is from the Wikipedia. Grafting. It says grafting or graphage. It says is a horticultural technique whereby tissues of plants are joined so as to continue their growth together. Now, this is significant in terms of what we've been talking about the aberrant man and the human. All of this is so significant. It gives us some insight about how these things, you understand, function in the natural as well as in the, you know, energetic realm. It said the upper part of the combined plant is called scion, while the lower part is called the root stock. The success of this joining requires that the vascular tissues grow together, and such joining is called inosculation. The technique is most commonly used in asexual propagation of commercially grown plants for the horticultural and agriculture trade. Now I'm gonna stop right there. And so naturally, we all know the 11th chapter of the book of Romans refers to this concept. And we're going to read just a little bit of it, and then we will get in. I'm going to move about. I'm going to start with the 13th verse of Romans, the 11th chapter. Romans 11 and verse 13. And I'm going to just move about, and I will tell you where I'm moving as I move. 13th verse. For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentile, I magnify my office. 14. If by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are my flesh, and might save some of them. 15. For if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? 16th verse. For if the first fruit be holy, said, or be whole, the lump is also holy or whole.
Mm-hmm.
And if the root be holy, so are the branches.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Verse 17. As if some of the branches be broken off, and thou being a wild olive tree were grafted in among them, and with them partakest of the root and the fatness of the olive tree.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 18. Boast not against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. Thou wilt say,
Mm-hmm.
the branches was broken off that I might be grafted in.
Mm-hmm.
20. Well, because of unbelief, they were broken off, and thou standest by faith. But be not high-minded, but fear. Now, I'm going to skip over to verse 25. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentile be come in. I'm a hold right there.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow.
Mm. Come on, Nasik.
So here we are talking about the
Yes.
end of
Yes.
Aberrant.
Yes. Absolutely. Come on,
And so
Nasik.
we going to kind of give a little overview, and then we will come back to, of course, we had our title as the creative power of the neuro-melanin consciousness. And what we did yesterday, we looked the branches, and I refer to that as we kind of looked up at things, and meaning that we didn't get into the root, the very core of what we're going to do today.
Okay.
And that means we look in today. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
important for us to also understand that we've been traditionally looking outside of ourselves, but now we know we must look in. But
Mm-hmm.
when you understand the inner and the outer being one,
Yes,
but you
sir.
got to first understand the relationship between as above, so below.
That's
Mhm.
correct.
Other
Mm-hmm.
than that, you start to look above always and never look below
That
or
Right.
within.
Right.
that is
And
correct.
so,
Yes.
what we're going to do, we're going to try to concentrate on the inward element, and then when we look outwardly, we will understand the fullness of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we went through the neuro-melanin consciousness, and one of the key points that we brought out was the molecular, formula of this melanin. And we read the definition of molecular, and I just wanted to, one point, it means relating to simple or elementary organization. Now, when we go back and look at the molecular formula, we find a significant key of the elements that make up this, you understand, melanin formula. And what we found, uh, that it had three different forms. And we talked about the gas, we talked about the liquids, and we talked about the solids. And we gave short definitions of what each one of those. But I want to go back to the formula that make up the, the melanin from the carbon element. And this was the key. Notice that it was 18 elements of carbon. And this is very significant. I mean, melanin in its formulation, the most significant element of melanin is carbon. And that's it's going to be very key. You know, we find that that was 18. We had 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons. But then when we went to hydrogen, we found the next highest element that was the composition that made up melanin was 10 for hydrogen. And we found the nitrogen element was only 2, and the oxygen element were 4. And so when we look at the melanin composition, we see the most significant being the carbon element. And so we went on to discuss the carbon, the melanin, what all of that really meant. But I want to put it within the context of how carbon leads to the major revelation that has been given to me in respect to, quote unquote, what is the mind and how this carbon, and I'm going to refer to it as neuro-melanin consciousness, being the significant element of this melanin or carbon, so that we can understand why it was so important for the world to come under the influence of deception. Now, we're going to reveal something about this today. So I want to put this context of the 18 elements of carbon, because we're going to see why this is so vital in our understanding as we continue to go forward. And we touched upon the great deception played upon humanity and how the whole world has come under, you know, the deception of the simulated reality. And then we went on to talk small about the neurogenesis, creation of new neurons and new cells. And in there, we brought up a term called BDNF, and it's brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And what it does, it stimulates the production of neurons or synapses. And we're going to see how all of this is so significant to the great deception that has been played upon humanity. And then we touched upon this, and that's why I use the term the branches. I just alluded to what the mind, we didn't get into explaining in depth the root of what the mind is. That we're going to do today. So you be clear what this mind is that everybody's referring to and they believe that they have. Okay? So, and our final point, so to speak, had to do with the process and the function of the brain. We just, you know, talked about the brain, but we didn't get into the depths of it. So just trying to kind of refreshing our thoughts on what we covered. I want to pick up with the point of played upon humanity, and we're going to move on to how this mind has played such a major role, in this whole deceptive process. So we read, the great deception played upon humanity. The concept of the mind has been used by the conspirators of the simulated reality of the world of the physical plane or realm to deceive and control humanity. Now we got to keep this in mind as to how we've been controlled and how humanity is being controlled. Concept of the mind. What we are going to do is to reveal this great deception. We will read the quote from the article of the Newsweek cover story of January 10 and 17, 2011, titled Grow Your Mind. And everybody's looking at it. Now let's go back to horticulture. When you look at the woman, you see horticulture. That's what, and I'm gonna make sure I get you, the link to look at this, because you gotta see what's happening and how this has played out. Now we talk about culture, but we don't talk about horticulture. We talk about culture, but not horticulture. So as we continue on, we're going to begin by saying, what we are going to do is to reveal the great kept secret as the major revelation of our time. What the scientists know about this great secret as the major revelation, if it is known, it will change the course of history. We are going to prove this revelation as a life changer from the transit to the eternal and on to physical immortality.
Mm. Mm.
Now, this is a life changer.
Yes.
When we get through today, we're going to really see why it was so important to create the concept of the mind.
Gotcha, Nasik.
Because it was going to keep you in a transient lifestyle, culture. It would never ever take you to the eternal. So we read the neurogenesis, the creation of new neurons. And this is a quote from the Newsweek I'm reading. It says, the quest for effective ways to boost cognitive capacity is not hopeless. I read again, the quest for effective ways to boost cognitive capacity is not hopeless. However, the explosion in neuroscience is slowly revealing the mechanism of cognition. Now, remember yesterday, most people think of cognition as thinking.
Thinking, right.
But we revealed yesterday that cognition really is knowing.
That's correct.
Know something. Now we got to go back to what I revealed. How did I know this morning that something was burning?
Right, right. Come on, Nasik.
How did I know that? Because of this what? Neuro-melanin. Ain't no other way for me to know it.
Right. Yes.
Absolutely.
Come on.
Come on. This is the quote he says. We have accumulated enough knowledge about the mechanism and molecular underpinnings of cognition, molecular. Now we talking about what? Simple organization. Nothing complex, simple organization. Independent of knowing, cognition. At the synaptic and circuit level, to say something about which process contributes, says James Beer of the University of Texas Southern Medical Center, who organized a symposium on cognitive enhancement strategies. Not to think, but how to know. 2010 meeting at the Society of Neuroscience. Quote, greater cognitive capacity comes from having more neurons or synapses. Now stop right there. If you do not have a continuation of new cells regenerating themselves and synapses, you're going to what? Start the degenerative cycle of getting sick. All the things we're talking about, strokes, heart, all that stuff. So we got to understand how to what? Maintain the what? New cells being created and a continual regeneration of them. Very, very important here.
Yes.
Higher levels of neurogenesis. Now listen to this. Higher levels of neurogenesis. The creation of new neurons. Now, if you ain't creating new ones, then they must be dying.
Yes.
Especially in the memory forming hippocampus. And increased production of compounds such as BDNF. What do they mean? Brain derived neurotrophic factor. It didn't say mind derived. It said the brain derived. Very key now, which stimulates the production of neurons and synapses, says neuroscientist Jacob Stern of Columbus University. Sound like a Jewish boy to me.
Right.
He said, both neurogenesis and synapses formation boosts learning, memory, reasoning, and creativity. Ain't saying nothing about the mind. But you gotta understand why this was so critical for, in this particular cycle of time, to emphasize the brain, and the mind, the brain being the same thing. Continuing on. He said, quote, and in people who excel at particular tasks, Stern's neuroimaging studies show brain circuits tend to be more efficient, using less energy, even as cognitive demands increase. Now let me read again. Brain circuits tend to be more efficient, using less energy, even as what? Cognitive or knowing demands increase. Higher capacity and more flexible. That's why we got to be very careful about becoming rigid.
Right.
Inflexible.
Yes.
Getting trapped in a mode of belief. That core belief that you just can't see it no other way.
That's right.
Come on, Nasik.
Strongest finding. Now, this is the key point. One of the strongest findings in neuroplasticity, the science of how the brain changes its structure and function in respect to input. Now, the brain changes structure and function. We ain't said nothing about the mind yet.
Right. Right.
But the article shows in bold print, grow your mind. So that was something that you had to what? Try to develop in order to boost the brain. And if you didn't what? Grow the mind, you couldn't boost the brain.
Right.
This is very, very key. Listen carefully.
Mm-hmm.
We continue on. It says, one of the strongest findings in neuroplasticity is the science of how the brain changes its structure and function in respect to input. Is that attention, what has Eitai been talking about? Is that attention is almost magical in its stability, or not stability, in its ability to physically alter the brain and enlarge functional circuits. Is almost magical in its ability, okay? Its ability to physically, oh, we talking about attention now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If the input, attention given to specific input. Specific input.
So Nasik,
Go ahead.
so this concept of the mind is like a Trojan horse.
Go ahead.
You with me?
Yeah.
So
Now,
whatever
go ahead.
you think you grow in the mind, but the mind, this concept of mind is just a vehicle for foreign thoughts or a virus that is going to do what? Affect your brain and neurogenesis.
Right. And we're gonna show how that point right there is brought. Now we got to go back to something called deception. So again, what Eitai was just saying. So what is it that's being put in that's causing people to be deceived?
Mm-hmm.
You know, now we got to understand the creative process of the physical thing became a necessity in order for whatever is going to what? Be conveyed through this physical apparatus called a body or called the brain. Okay, so the brain is a conduit, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It is used to what? Allow certain knowledge, you understand, in to have this effect upon the physical apparatus.
Mm-hmm.
You follow?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So we continue on. Now, it said, we have heard it said that the mind is a terrible thing to lose. Abba once stated, if you don't use it, you will lose it. We lost access to what we have been, we lost access to what we've been programmed to believe is our mind when we emanated into the simulated reality of the earth's plane. The mind is always related to or associated with memory, and when you lose your memory, you have or you lose your mind. Now, let's get to the point. We're getting right to the point here. The brain is animated with consciousness through the source of melanin that produces awareness. Melanin as the source is composed of carbon 18, hydrogen 10, nitrogen 2, and oxygen 4 elements. Now, here we go. The revelation given to me by the ancestors is the one thing the aberrant man does not want known. The one secret which the aberrant man has only known with his discovery is what they refer to as the mind. Listen, the mind is none other than the indestructible carbon neuro-melanin consciousness. That's why they tell you about, oh, you got a subconscious. And the subconscious mind is the one that's what? Doing all these things that you ain't aware of. Now, hear me now, neuro-melanin. Here we go. This is a quote from Joseph Dispenza, page 69 in the book called Evolve Your Brain. This is his quote. He said, the brain was/is a conduit, a channel that is essential for conveying anything. The brain without consciousness is inert and lifeless. When consciousness is facilitated through the human brain, the end result is called mind. I'll read it again. When consciousness is facilitated through the human brain, the end result is called mind. Mind is a working brain, a brain in action. Mind comes into being when an operating brain is animated with life. Well, how is it animated with life? Other than what? Neuro-melanin conscious carbon.
That's right.
There is no mind. Here we go. He said, there is no mind without the physical expression of life through a functioning brain.
Wow. Wow.
There is no mind
Wow.
without physical, which means they created the concept of the mind for one purpose, and that is to create this what? Concept of white supremacy.
Yes.
With the educational process of they bringing everybody under this influence of what, and I call culture now. Go back. Culture, development of the mind by what? Education and training. You are trained to believe this, and if you believe it, you're going to defend it.
Yes. Yes.
And that same thing you train to defend is going to be the end of you being existing on the planet.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
I want you to hear me, because this is critical here.
Yes. Come on, Nasik.
For everybody to accept.
Absolutely critical.
Come on.
Continue on. Consciousness is a cycle of awareness, because things that are alive have to be cyclical. Energy is actually consciousness of a particular knowledge, either of the dominion of darkness or light, which is either true and valid or false and invalid. Now here we go. The knowledge that one incurs or conceives is information that informs one that it is either true or false. Now, key point. The dominion of light is falsely perceived and understood that the sons of light possesses the truth during what is called the civilization of deception. All of those under the influence of those core beliefs upon which one builds their world create inflexibility. Any culture mainstream, inherent rigidity, any culture mainstream, inherent rigidity expresses itself as an active resistance to change.
Yes.
Any inherent rigidity leads to inflexibility, which absorbs one's energy by trying to hold on to one's core beliefs. This rigid conceptual idea, accepted as the knowledge of truth, is a false cognition of false knowing or knowledge that have deceived all of humanity.
Wow.
Nasik,
Yes, sir.
the last thing you just shared, we actually see that within our own house.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We see that in our own. We got to be real with this. We see that in our own house.
So, yeah, this
go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
This is what we've been saying, Nasik, and emphasizing that this judgment begins at the house of God with each and every one of us.
Has to start with us.
Has to start with us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Now, here we go. Continue on. We find one of the most important keys to the change of the structure and function of the brain is input. Input must be defined from a holistic point of reference, even when we understand that input determines output.
Mm-hmm.
When we have the unity of thought of wholeness instead of dualism,
Mm-hmm.
we have the correct input.
Mm-hmm.
The major input has to be the knowledge of wholeness activated by the dark melanin substance.
Yes.
What we are talking about is the creation of new neurons or cells that change the structure and function of the brain. If you are under the influence of light and you have those as your core belief system, how things are ran, how you should do things,
Mm-hmm.
you got the wrong input.
Mm-hmm. Come on.
And if you allow that structure of how your brain functions, you're going to resist change because
Yes.
you're going to defend even to your own death.
Yes.
Possess a mind and everybody else is wrong and you right.
Yes. Kane, I see. Kane.
That's right.
Say what we ingest by mouth is critical to the outcome and effect it has on the organism. We also must be concerned with what comes into our hearing, or it can influence our behavior. Now, you have sometimes you say, well, somebody do something, well, why you do it? They say, I don't know. Behavior is what? Activated by the knowledge and belief of the knowledge that comes into your awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Thus, eventually, this will have an effect upon the influence of the process of one's human development being halted. Now, Aberrant said the process of human development was tied steadfast to the quest for Yah. When one halt, the other must cease. So now we find that we can understand now why human development has halted or ceased. And we're going on. The process of human development is tied fast to the quest for Yah or the quest for wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
This quest is one's maintenance with the eternal energy cyclic function of nature known as the life force, earth, wind, fire, water. Thus, without the formula of life itself and the elements that it is composed of, which is carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen, there is no life. Mm-hmm. So if we allow a knowledge that a poisoning causing degeneration of the brain cells without the ability to what? Maintain and regenerate brain cells. Then what? We are what? Without the active carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen within the melanin formula. And if it's not active, life is going to be extinguished.
Yes. Can I see? Can I see?
Now, the process that is necessary for the function of the brain. The process that is necessary for the function of the brain. Here we go. When / however, this perpetual energy cyclic functional movement is halted, disrupted / disrupted, so does one's human development cease. Without the continuation of one's human development, the life of humanity ends. Human development must cease when the eternal energy cyclic function known as earth, wind, fire, and water is no longer the governor of the lifespan of humanity. The process of human development can be acquired through a renewed, regenerative process known as intermittent fasting that will provide the time cycle for the brain to create and develop new neurons / cells. This process of intermittent fasting provides the necessary time cycle also for creativity and activation of an organic compound or protein known as ketone. Now we go back to the BDNF derived neurotrophic factor. Within this concept, we found that there was something, there was a necessity in order for the brain to have the access to what? Recreating new cells, ketones. Now here we go. Ketones are an organic compound or protein. Remember now, that's what carbon is. When you look at the formula of carbon, we talk about what? The building, or melanin, the building blocks of nature, or life. What we're talking about a protein, okay? Amino acid protein. So here we go. Ketones are an organic compound or protein, and when it is consumed as a fat-based energy source, it becomes a major contributor to the creation of new neurons for greater memory, learning capacity, reasoning, discerning, and creativity. Ketones are an organic compound or protein with a carbonyl, here we go, with a carbonyl group attached to two carbon atoms. Two carbon atoms. BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, is a natural protein that we have that actually activate stem cells in the brain to make new brain cells. This is very, very significant here. Here we go. It is the dark black substance, dark matter, dark energy of neuro-melanin that is activated / producing the new neurons and synaptic. This is what makes new neurons a cell when the brain, within the brain, that makes one whole. Intermittent fasting, or when you are in the fasting state, you increase the brain-derived neurotrophic factor by 400%.
Dang.
Wow.
400%.
Wow.
This means if you increase this substance by 400%, this should be one of the main goals, which is to activate your brain stem cells. into brain neuron, nerves, and brain cells. This will help to activate a new neuron will have to activate new neurons for greater memory, learning capacity, reasoning, and creativity. However, there exists another function that the brain is enlarged from, which is glucose or sugar. Now, this is where we fall victim here. Glucose or sugar. And in the process of time, an overconsumption creates havoc. This overconsumption of eating or hearing things that are not in harmony with the universe creates the havoc of great confusion and disorder within the organism. Therefore, this leads to a wide as well as a general destruction, thus preventing the human growth hormone from being activated. Thus, as a result, we can see why the general health of most of the planet is very poor. Now, here we go. What we are going to do here is show us now how this neuro-melanin protein, function. We says here, and the ancestors left us a key. And we're going to find it in Psalms 119, verse 49 and 50. It says here, what scientists is referring to as the mind has been and always will be melanin. This is what the ancestors or the prophets was trying to convey unto us since the fall of our emanation into the earth realm. We find this reference in the biblical narrative of Psalms 119, verse 49 and 50. And this is what it reads. Remember the word unto thy servant, upon which thou hast caused me to hope. This is my comfort in my affliction, for thy word has quickened me. Now, I'm going to read that again, Psalm 119, 49 and 50. Now, this word remember, we got to understand that is zakah. Zakah means to remember, all right? Now, it says, remember the word unto thy servant. Well, the word servant here, and if you look at it in the English, you think about servants and somebody being under somebody, but the word servant here means avad, to work. Now, but it ain't got nothing to do with you working for somebody else. You got to work for yourself.
Right.
You have to work for yourself here. This is what they're trying to be told to us here. Upon which thou hast caused me to hope. This is my comfort in mine affliction, for thy word has quickened me. Now I'm going to kind of interpret that. What we are given to understand in this narrative is to remember zakah, to mention, as a memorial. Thus, as being the servant, abad, to work, to serve the time necessary to execute the cause of their hope. See, if we don't execute the cause of our hope, who do we think going to execute the cause of our hope? It's certainly not going to be outside of us.
Yes.
And this word hope is yakal. It says to wait, to be patient in one affliction.
Wow.
Wow.
Now see.
Then if you wait and be patient in your afflictions, then affliction means ana. And that means one should not be looking down our browbeating self. One must be One must not be arrogant in speech or that of a bully, but as a hero or fierce warrior.
Okay.
That is excellent.
Yes,
One
absolutely,
must
Nasik.
not be arrogant in speech
Yes.
or that
Come
of
on.
a bully, but as a hero or a fierce warrior. This
Yes.
is this is to be your comfort, nakam, to sigh, so as to ferry about, to maintain the things upon which thou hast caused one to avenge self.
Wow.
Now, we do not use that which has been given to us to avenge ourselves. Then we don't expect to what? Be avenged for what has taken place with us.
Yes. Yes.
Now, see,
Yes.
we don't brought a
Dang,
stick
Nasik.
to a gunfight.
Hold on. Put it on pause for a minute, Eitai, please.
One.
So what we have to remember here is that everything that the narrative speaks about, it has to do with something that we have to do, and it all have to start from within. It all have to start from within. We got to remember this. And that is the what? The word. Now that we understand it, now we have to start what? Mentioning it and speaking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Mentioning it and speaking about it and what? Doing these things that is what? Relative to how we going to avenge ourselves. Now
Yes.
this takes me into the Genesis creative narrative, so we can understand the narrative in respect to how we bring it into the aberrant man. We read, we must look closely at the two concepts in the creative narrative, darkness and light, evening and morning, day and night. The first thing we must notice is that there is 6 different words, yet they are exactly the same concept. Did you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I say it again.
Right with you, Nasik.
Darkness, light, evening, morning, day and night. The first thing we must notice here is there is 6 different words, yet they are the exact same concept.
Dang.
The second thing we must do is to categorize the 6 words, and we will see that they are opposites.
Mm-hmm.
Since they are opposites, they are categorized and then they are divided. Once we start to look into the meaning of the words, we are able to see and understand. Let us look at our first word, darkness. And of course, the number is 28:22, and it says Koshik. Now, but one key word in here, and that brings out everything. Koshik. Word is obscurity. This is the word that brings out everything. Then the next word is falsehood. Then the next word is ignorance. And then the next word is misery. Now, obscure. Etymology is Latin. Obscure in the way. Obscure in the way. In other words, something can be in your way to obscure you from being able to see something.
Mm-hmm.
You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
Akin to Greek,
Mm-hmm.
acuity, to conceal. To conceal. Number 1A is dark, dim. B, shrouded in or hidden by darkness. C, not clearly seen or easily distinguished. Faint, not readily understood, or clearly expressed. Vague, abstruse, also mysterious. Mysterious. 3, relatively unknown, as a remote, secluded place, not prominent or famous. Well, who is not prominent and famous in terms of the very color black or the color dark?
Mhm.
Pause at Eitai for a moment.
1.
So as we were saying about who is it that's not prominent and not famous, and that is relating to not a color, but it's relating to a people of that color.
Mm.
This is very important now, because we go to the next point. We say then our next word is light, and it gives the word, or the number is 216, and this is the key word here, the first one. Now you understand light to be or, but the key word here is enlightenment.
Mhm.
Enlightenment. Enlightenment, happiness, and cheerfulness. Okay, now think about this. When we go back to what it's called and what we were taught, the time of the Gentiles, this was what they call the age of enlightenment.
Mhm.
That's correct.
The age
Mhm.
of enlightenment,
Mhm.
age of enlightenment brought with it what is called happiness and cheerfulness for certain people, but others it was not.
Right.
You know, here we go. It says uh, the light. Then it says, then the evening was 6148, which is called Erev. It means to braid, i.e., intermix to traffic. Now, wait a minute. So what is evening? We know it ain't talking about the evening like the evening in the sense of the day, but it's talking about these dominions of cycles of time within these days and weeks and months and years, what is called an age, or which is called an epoch of time,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
is where the dominion takes place in. So
That's
this is what
correct.
it's talking about. So this is how the intermingling that is referring to is taking place. And it goes on to say, continuing on, it says, as by barter. Well, if you bartering with somebody, that means you intermingling, you in a relationship with somebody that you are what? Bartering with. It says
Mhm.
also to give or be secure. Now, so have we been bartering for our security? We got to think
Mhm.
about this now
Mhm.
as a kind of exchange
Mhm.
or engagement to enter into or to mellow with, to mingle self, or to mortgage, to occupy or give pledge, come or put into security. So now, have we been trying to find security among? Remember now we talk about the branch and the root.
Mhm.
All of that is talking about, this dispensation of time where the dominion of light and the dominion of darkness, you understand, had rulership. Just to kind of digress for a moment to hopefully give a little bit more clarity. And we remember now when Jacob came out second, but he came out second after Esau, but he was given dominion first. And Esau was what? Had to serve him. But then as Esau stated, he said, but when the dominion shift and the yoke has been taken off of me, he said, the days of mourning will be at hand. So let's put that into the cycle of slavery, dealing with the dominion of light and the dominion of darkness had ran its course, and a people, of melanin was under the influence of the fair melanin people.
That's right.
Continuing on, it said the morning, baka, primitive root means to plow or in general to break forth. Figuratively, to inspect, to admire, or care for. Well, what does the morning got to do with you inspecting and caring? Who is it that you inspecting and caring for? We understand this cycle of time and this dominion that brought with it a form of knowledge that brought with it a meaning called a mind. And that mind has become the knowledge that has caused what? All havoc to take place within the human, you understand, organism as well upon the planet. As well as upon the planet. Continuing on, say then we have day, an unused root, a space of time defined by association, term, or time used as an age. Now this verifies everything I just said. The day, concept of the day, verifies everything that we have said. So as we continue on in closing to this point, the allegorical terms of darkness and light, evening and morning, night and day are used or played out in the simulated reality of darkness and light as ages and epochs of time. These concepts of dominion, rulership are usually incorrectly interpreted, in most cases in the narrow sense, as cycles of days, weeks, months, and years.
That's correct.
In most instances, these greater periods of time are called ages, millennia, and epochs are usually forgotten. They are all expressing greater to lesser time cycles whenever the creation is read in the biblical narrative. These ages and cycles of time have been wrongfully interpreted. Actually, there are time periods as the age of darkness and the age of light. We are presently transiting out of the age of light, which is why there was a movement in Europe called the Renaissance. The cycle of the Renaissance was the transition from the age of darkness, when African melanin people ruled during the great dynasties or dominions during these particular time cycles. These dynasties, such as Mizraim / Egypt, Songhai, Mali, Timbuktu, all support the idea of the dominion of darkness of melanin people. This is symbolized in the writings of Aberrant in respect to our present worldview of dualism and in retrospect to that of holism. We are now able to comprehend and understand that which had been previously hidden or concealed. What Aberrant had stated there was that everything that came out of Europe, it divides us. Everything. In his 10,000 religions, you understand? His whole concept of man and woman, everything is divisive. Then we quote from Aberrant, he said, does the idea that Eve was created from the organic part of man mean that she is eternally connected to him? Are we reminded, or better yet warned, that there can be no survival of one at the expense of the other? Any significant alteration to the specific relationship between Adam and Eve will create difficulty in their environment that, if not reversed in time, will lead to their extinction. And we went on to say, let us view Adam and Eve not as a historical people, but we now know this was an allegory of the dual nature of masculine and feminine energy existing in every living human species. So when we look at this, from an allegory, we see the cycle of time of darkness and light. We see the word dynasty. And what it says here is a dynasty is a succession of rulers of the same line or descent. Now, we can go back and say, well, okay, but let's bring it forward to today. When we look at the line of descent, when you go through the rulership of most countries, and we're going to deal particularly with America, we see that there is always some kind of relative connection, to every president that has been there on the throne, and that whole lineage of thing, it stays within a certain group. So now we can see now why our people were so pumped up when the idea of a black man getting
Right.
White House.
Right. Okay.
We can clearly see why, because what now we see the dynasty or succession of rulers of the same line of descent. But then the definition too say a powerful group or family that maintains its position for a considerable time. Have not the aberrant man maintained his position ever since he what? Came to power? Has he maintained his position? Has he changed?
Absolutely. No doubt.
So we see the age of enlightenment. We see the dominion presently in existence is the dominion of light and not that of darkness. When looking at the word Renaissance, now Middle French etymology, to be born again. Now the concept of Renaissance means to be born again. Mm-hmm. Now when we understand that, we thought being born again had to do with a religious, aspect. But now we're seeing that this was what? Going back to the Esau and Jacob. Mm-hmm. This was Esau coming what? To power. This was Esau coming to power. We go on, we say, born again, more a nation. 1845, that's when it was coined. Number one, the transitional movement in Europe between medieval and modern times, beginning in the 14th century in Italy, lasting into the 17th century, and marked by humanistic revival of influence expressed in a flowering of arts and literature, and by the beginning of modern science. Enlightened. Now, 1587. And we can see now all of this now, remind you now, the Bible being translated, you can understand what was going on from the 14th century. That's 200 years.
Right. 200
years. So we can understand how certain things has been translated, understanding that the forethought of the ancestors had their hand on the pen. We clear about that. But nevertheless, this was allowed to take place because that time cycle that our sister spoke of a few minutes ago, where we had to find patience during that cycle to allow it to run its course, so we would be on time and in time to activate the final phase of this flawed dominion.
That's it.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Bingo.
Enlightenment. Well, let me go back again to the enlightenment. It says, archaic means illuminate. We find that word throughout Daniel. Then number two, it said to furnish knowledge to. So this is what happened during this cycle of time. This is the knowledge that the scientists came up with the necessity of creating something called a mind, that they knew that it was going to have a destructive effect upon the brain, and the brain being central nervous system that was what carrying this knowledge throughout every molecule, cell within the makeup of the human body. They knew at a particular time there was going to be a major degeneration to take place. Well thought out, well thought out. So now I think this will help us to understand what Eitai been talking to us about this dying concept. And he made the distinction about the physical element of the makeup of Jesus Christ and the higher nature being the Christ. So we can try to understand from that point of reference. Next point, free from ignorance and misinformation. Now, that's the enlightened period of 1663. Free from ignorance and misinformation. Well,
right.
The misinformation and the ignorance was not being free. It was free to what? Allow misinformation and ignorance to what? Run rampant within the what? Dominion of light.
To proliferate.
As to proliferate. It was free. It was free, but not like, we possibly may thought about being free,
Right. It was free
like you was coming from darkness, and darkness was an ignorant state, and you was free from. No, that ain't what it means. Free to what? Ignorance to what? Proliferate with misinformation, and if that ain't how things function now, then we ain't on this call.
Right.
Now see, it was free. It was free for these weeds and wildflowers to grow up as a mind.
You're right. Okay, it says based on full comprehension of the problems involved. Okay, now we're gonna jump now to enlighten, and then we're gonna jump right on into the closing out of it so that we'll get the fullness of it. Enlightenment, 1669, the act of meaning of enlightening, the state of being enlightened. A philosophical movement of the 18th century marked by a rejection of traditional social, religious, and political ideas and emphasis on rationalism. That's what we wrestling with. This is exactly what we wrestling with. This age of rational, emphasis on rationalism, emphasis on duality. What now? This is what we said. What Europe rejected was the holistic concept of the social, energetic, spiritual dynasties in the rulership of the ancient ancestral Melian people. That's what they rejected.
Right.
They rejected the holistic concept of the social, energetic, spiritual dynasties in the rulership of ancient ancestral Melanin people. This is defined by European contemporaries as social, religious, political ideas and emphasis on rationalism today that have led humanity into a dualistic way of thinking. The age of reason, 1650, a period characterized by prevailing belief in the use of reason, especially the 18th century in England and France, the time of life when one begins to be able to distinguish right from wrong. Now, this distinguishing right from wrong, was not anything that we dealt with right and wrong. We dealt with holism, okay? So the concept of rationalism brought the concept of right and wrong, good and evil. All that came in with the age of reason.
That's right, moralism. Moralism. Yes.
Right. All of this came in with that. Now we close the last point. We know exactly how to halt the destruction of the aberrant man. The onslaught of the aberrant man, if it is not stopped, there will not be any flesh left alive. Historically, the success of the aberrant species has been dualism, which has created individualism. This is to say that he recognized his power so as to keep everyone divided under the influence of dualism. We know exactly how to activate our power of the unified relationship of wholeness of the universe and in the aberrant man's dominion and in his rulership. Last point. The concept of the aberrant, the etymology is to go astray, to wander, straying from right or straying from wholeness or the normal way, deviating from the usual or natural type, synonym atypical, not typical, irregular, unusual. This is a species, person, or group whose behavior departs substantially, okay, from the standard, which is wholeness. We need to understand that we are under the same influence of dualism, and as a result, we now are also the aberrant man. So to destroy him, we must destroy dualism within ourselves. To destroy the aberrant man, first we must destroy dualism within ourselves.
Yes, sir.
Other than that, we are perpetuating his will via rationalism and dualism. And that just continue the perpetuation of his lifestyle. The signs of our true power we have forgotten, although it has never shifted from its source, which is the power of our unified relationship with the wholeness of the universe. The destruction of dualism is the destruction of the aberrant man. So that concludes the process by which we must understand how relevant it is for us to move expeditiously in the understanding of eradicating the concept of dualism within self, first and foremost, so that we can understand how it has had a profound effect on us through creating a concept of a mind and a brain, and then making somebody believe that you got a mind and a brain. They're the same thing, but they got two different names. And in doing that, we can see now how significant it is to have an understanding of why he created the concept of a mind. Because this would allow him to create the cultural idea of the development and what? Training this mind, training you to follow the concepts, ideas, and belief of the dominion of light as being in complete harmony with the universe. Then he turned around and defined the word dualism as being, two different what? Concepts in the universe that are what? That are at odds with one another. So he fixed it real, real well. So it was almost impossible for us to break ties with this aberrant, you understand, dominion and rulership. So with that, I want to thank the family for allowing me this opportunity to share these things. And hopefully it was clear enough that, you know, we can have some discussion to further expand the idea. And if not, I'll be open for questions. Not necessarily tonight because I got a meeting in 10 minutes, but I want to thank everybody for their attention and for their patience and for their understanding, you know, of being on the line at this particular time. With that, hold this family.